Welcome to Wrestling with Success, the best and only podcast for the wrestlers of tomorrow. Please welcome your host, Nigel? Oh, right. Your host and future champion, Neil McMillan.
Yo.
So, guys and girls and wrestling fans worldwide, welcome to episode 12 of the Wrestling with Success podcast. This episode, I have a man with wrestling in his veins. He is a second generation wrestler, a guy who was born into wrestling, son of Mr. TNT, Steve Morocco, and the head trainer of the Essex School of Wrestling Training School. He's the dynamite of the Morocco family. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Danny Morocco. Mr. Morocco, how are you?
I'm alright, mate. Tired, but okay.
So, Danny, as I explained in my intro, you are a second generation wrestler. Your dad was a wrestler. So it goes without saying how you got into the wrestling business. But can you let the listeners know a little bit about your journey with wrestling so far?
Yeah, it's fine. Obviously started wrestling from the womb, really. Well, started getting trained by my old man around about the age of 7. He didn't really want me in a ring before I was 13. So my professional debut was 13 years old.
Wow.
I used to come out with a bonnet on and used to be called El Torres. Because I had really, really poor facials, as my dad used to say. So, started like that. Went up to about the age of 20, 21, and then decided that I wanted to start a family, so took a couple of years out to do that. And now just trying to breaking my way back into it.
So, I mean, I attended one of your sessions at your training schools, Essex School of Wrestling, on Sunday, and some of the stories that you were coming out with were pretty incredible. About, I mean, it's safe to say that your dad made sure that you were initiated into wrestling the hard way. Is that fair to say?
Oh, definitely. It's the only way to do it.
So, I mean, what was training like then? Did your dad train you 1-to-1, or did you go to a training school as well? Or?
It was a bit hard, really, because when I'm sorry about that. When I first started training as such, my old man used to get me to do stupid things. Like one of the first memories I ever have of actually wrestling was mucking around with my dad and him getting me to do a drop kick, probably at the age of about 7, off of the living room sofas and landed straight onto my ass.
Yeah.
So that was one of my first memories, was bruising all my coccyx up and having to show me butt at the doctor's the next day. So it was a bit different. I mean, as far as wrestling schools go, he did open a school, but that was when I was around about 15, 16. No, maybe 13, 14. Yeah, about 14 years old, I think, he opened a school. And that was in Colchester. And I've never had such a laugh. I mean, the first move I ever got taught properly was a double leg Nelson, which everyone now knows as a sunset flip.
Yeah.
So that was how I was taught, really, kind of dragged into it more than anything. I mean, as soon as I said that I wanted to do it, I think my dad just jumped at the chance.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Do you have any other brothers and sisters, or are you the only heir to the throne?
No, I've got an elder sister and a younger stepsister, and I've been trying to coax my stepsister into doing it, but she's having nothing of it. But my older sister done it for a little while, like kind of training, but she was maybe a little bit too vicious for it.
So, I mean, when you were training, what were the main things you were struggling with when you were learning and training to become a wrestler?
The hardest part for me, I didn't have much of... My size was obviously a barrier to a certain extent, because being the height I am, I'm only 5'7", and everyone expects someone at my height to be flipping around and fucking running around on them ropes and shit like that, and it's just not my style of wrestling. I mean, my dad kind of taught me how to be grounded from the beginning, but the main thing I struggled with really was actually stuff like European uppercuts and forearms, which is quite basic as far as wrestling goes, but that was what I struggled with.
Oh, fair enough. So, I mean, have you ever struggled with the whole you get heat because your dad gives you opportunities or anything like that, or have you made sure that you kind of paved your own way into the business?
I don't know really. I've never really got too much heat. I mean, yeah, you're gonna get heat, but at the same time, my dad was like one of the biggest promotions in the country, so everyone was nice to me because they wanted to get more work, and they knew that, like, yeah, people used to rib me. I used to get called fucking Shane McMahon and stuff like that. I never ever put myself as that sort of position, but
yeah,
I don't know. It kind of put a blur on my wrestling, I think, a little bit, but I think I was brought into it the right way, so I had the respect there in the first place. But as for a hard time, I mean, I've been scuffed a little bit. I've been thrown around a little bit by a couple of workers, but nothing really. Compared to what trainees are getting nowadays, it's nothing really. But it's a difference in training. I was trained the right way with psychology as well, so I knew the politics of wrestling before I'd even got in the ring.
Yeah.
So when it comes to people going on shows and getting ribbed in the changing rooms, or even getting ribbed by the promoters nowadays, I mean, you've got promoters out there that won't pay a penny for their workers. And I mean, sorry about that, bloody loud motorbike going by.
That's all right.
But I mean, when a promoter don't want to pay an actual worker, especially when that worker's a better worker than themselves, that's not on. I think that's where wrestling is a bit cocked up. But that's my opinion, and I know other people are going to have different opinions on it. I know people will think that's their way of getting into wrestling, and that's what you have to do in wrestling. You have to do some shows for free. Don't get me wrong, I've done shows for free to get your name out there.
Yeah.
To kind of get noticed by that promoter, and you want to work for that promoter. That's normally how you do it, unless you're lucky and a promoter comes to you. With wrestling nowadays, I think you have to mark out for yourself as much as you can to get any type of publicity. That's the hard thing. That's the hard thing, is to do it without cringing.
So, I mean, like you said about you kind of learning the politics, what's the kind of what's the main things that you've learned psychology wise, and how to deal with you getting yourself booked, what to do and what not to do in terms of how you treat people in the locker room?
Well, to be honest, at the beginning of your wrestling career, you shouldn't give a shit about anything apart from being nice to everyone. I mean, I know people that have been in wrestling for 10 minutes and they're already getting themselves headshots done and Polaroids and pictures and every type of merchandise so they can sell it. I mean, that shouldn't be done unless you've been in the game, in my eyes, 15, 20 years, you know. You shouldn't be doing that at that point. You should have a name to be able to sell anything. But as far as wrestling etiquette goes, if you walk into a changing room, if you want to get noticed and if you want to stay on them shows, you've got to be the nicest person there until you're firmly into wrestling and people know you. You can't walk in there with an ego before you've got a name.
Yeah. No, fair enough. And in terms of actual physical training as well, what are the same mistakes you see from people over and over again? People starting out training and working the wrestling scenes. I know you said the merchandise thing, but
yeah. Well, this is the thing with wrestlers, especially British wrestlers. No one's really got a body in British wrestling. It's very rare that anyone's got a body in British wrestling. That's why as soon as there's someone who's a bit big, so someone like my old man or someone like Stu Allen or along them lines, a big lump of a geezer, is going to look outstanding. But I think the British wrestling is lazy when it comes to it. I mean, I can't say anything. I'm overweight myself, but I know I can still move in the ring. But the biggest thing I see, and that's just from running training school, is people not having a strong neck. People underestimate what it's like when you're bumping around 5 nights a week and you can't walk afterwards. I've been at that point. I've had the whiplash. I've had that sort of experience, and it's not nice. I was always taught, strengthen your neck, neck bridges, neck bridges, neck bridges. As soon as you ain't got a strong neck, you might as well get out of the ring.
Yeah.
But that comes with experience of my old man breaking his neck.
Oh, wow. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
I mean, with the school, I tell all my trainees, like, everyone do your neck bridges. I tell them every time, and they will quote me on that 100%, that I will always say to people, do your neck bridges, and I know I said it to you.
Yeah.
As soon as you come down, the first thing we do is we go through the grade 1. I mean, yeah, my trainees at the moment are on mats. I don't feel like they need a ring yet. not yet. The moment they need a ring is when they start deciding they're going to run ropes and stuff like that. But at the moment, with their bumps and with their chain, that's all they need. They don't need no ring yet.
Yeah. So I mean, so you mentioned the school, and so Essex School of Wrestling, which is based in Essex. How did you go about kind of taking your time off from wrestling, starting a family, to then opening up your own wrestling school?
Conversation with my father.
Yeah.
Had a phone call with him. I've always missed wrestling. I mean, I deleted my wrestling Facebook just so I didn't have to see all my old wrestling friends doing shows. It was always a thing that was always stuck in the back of my head. I always wanted to get back into it. Always needed it in my life as such. But obviously, I met my partner through it. She was training at my dad's school, and I said to her, she was trying to find something to do with the weekend sort of thing, and we said, let's open a school. So that was it. It started from there, really, and I don't know, I think we're 3 or 4 months in now, and I mean, we haven't got the amount of trainees that we need, admittedly, but that comes with time more than anything. And we had Marty Jones down for a seminar. I mean, the way he teaches people is you couldn't ask for anyone else better. I mean, 7 times world champion. He knows what he's on about, and he's been in the game for so long. He lives and breathes wrestling. But he come down, showed my trainees what's what when it comes to wrestling, and little things even I grasped onto. The old school way of doing things. When someone starts to get up, if you're a heel, someone starts to get up, give them a little knee to the jaw, stand on the hand, something like that. I mean, it's all little things, but it all adds up, and it ultimately gets you over as a pretty good heel.
Yeah, and I suppose where you've been brought up with your dad, you've kind of been shown a lot more of the old school way of wrestling than I suppose the new school way of wrestling. What are the main differences that you notice from how it used to be to how it is now?
How it used to be to how it is now seems to be that people want to do 1,001 things in the ring and get no pop. I mean, yeah, I understand flying around like a fucking monkey. I understand that, and understand there's a certain degree of acrobatics that is in wrestling nowadays, and there's a lot more than what was in 20, 30 years ago. But if you look at the old stuff, and you look at the way that people are popping, and you look at the way that the old ladies are throwing their handbags, and I mean, you look at people like Klondike Kate. I mean, I watched the documentary on her, and she said she's had an old lady put a tetanus shot in her.
Wow.
A foot and mouth shot, sorry, not a tetanus, foot and mouth shot, because she was so over as a heel. They hated her. They absolutely hated her. And you watch the old stuff, you watch Mick McManus. He's unbelievably hated by a whole country. You know what I mean? And that's how you can get over. Nowadays, everyone wants to run around the ring at 1,000,000 miles an hour, jump off every single rope and put every single move into something, and it don't make sense at the end of the day. I mean, the way I understand it is wrestling, you're having an actual fight. I mean, the psychology of it is I'm supposed to, say if I was in the ring with you, I'm supposed to beat you down until I find a weak body part. And as soon as I find that weak body part, that's the body part that I work until you either submit or you're unconscious or I pin you.
Yeah.
I mean, even when it comes to the psychology of pinning someone, everyone does this thing of just lifting a leg up. No one understands that you're supposed to be pushing them shoulders down. There's supposed to be a fight for them to stay down, for them 3 counts. That's why I was taught amateur wrestling as well before I was taught in professional wrestling. So my dad taught me how to handle myself more than other wrestlers. I mean, also the other way I was taught was to be able to get in a ring without rehearsing anything. So you don't know what's going on in that ring. You literally go in there. You have, I wouldn't say a fight because it's not a fight, but you go in there, you have a match. And them matches are the best matches I've ever had. I mean, I've had matches with Marty's girl. And I mean, these are on holiday camps, right? And I'm working in Southport. And this is in front of 1,000 people. And I'm doing rubbish because my dad's told him backstage, he said to Marty's girl, don't let him have anything. So I'm trying my best to get my ass up off the floor. He's knocking me down, up again, knocking me down. It weren't until the last day of tour that I actually give something back. And it actually looked like a good match. And that was one of the only matches my dad's come up to me afterwards, said, really good match, I enjoyed it.
Wow.
I mean, for a 30-year veteran of the sport to come up to you, even though he is my dad, to say something like that, it's amazing, really. But I think when it comes to the way I've shaped my career in the terms of coming out of it and having a family and that, I might have come out at the wrong time. I might have come out when the going was getting good, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because I've got a lovely daughter now and I've got my missus and I'm happy, you know?
No, definitely. I mean, I can appreciate the family and the kids, and if anything, you're 23, so you're still relatively young as well, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still young. Don't take that away from me yet. The missus is all right. She's a couple of years older than me, so she's kind of counting down the years to 30, and I'm still in my 20s, so I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, I enjoy that. My wife's she's only 6 months older than me, but man, those 6 months, I love every moment of it. I'm always rolling her face.
It makes a difference, mate.
It really does. So I mean, Danny, let's try and sell people on this wrestling school. Why should people come to Essex School of Wrestling? Tell us what you can offer.
What I can offer. In terms of wrestling training, I can offer people how to get taught the proper way. I mean, you might think of me that I'm only 23 years old. Fair enough, yeah, I'm a young lad. I'm not even a name in wrestling. I mean, my old man's a name compared to me. I'm nothing. But the way I was taught was the old school way. And I was taught to respect the job, and I was taught to not make a mockery of the job. And I was also taught the big key factor of psychology behind the job. I know I keep saying that word, psychology, but it's the biggest thing in wrestling. I mean, you can be an amazing worker and you can have a brilliant gimmick, but if you get in that ring and you have no psychology behind the match, you might as well quit. There's nothing to a match if there's no psychology in the match. I mean, I'm not going to get in a match with someone, start working their arm, and then finish on a fucking, like a brain buster. I mean, I'm going to try and go for a submission. You know, I'm going to wrap you up. I'm going to tie you into a ball, and that's the type of stuff that I'm training people, and that's where my trainees have stopped thinking about flying around and stopped thinking about going a million miles an hour and slowed it down. There's one thing I always say, and I think now you can even quote me on this, is if your body's going 1,000 miles an hour, your brain's going a million miles an hour in wrestling. 100%, and that's what I always tell my trainees, and I always tell them, calm it down, slow it down, relax. You've got all day.
Yeah, no, and I can appreciate that from coming to the session as well. That, you know, as we're going through the motions of things, you kind of saying slow it down. There's no rush, and then you kind of slow it down. And like you said in the training session, that as soon as you slow it down, your mind becomes clear, and everything. The next move shows itself to you, and it's definitely true.
As soon as if I can lock up with someone, put them in a backhammer, take them down to the floor, and I'll know if they're face down, I've got their legs, I've got their arms. I can do so much with their body, it's unreal. And that's what people don't understand. I mean, like, in wrestling, you do a jump start. I understand that. So you jump in, you start beating down on each other. But there's still got to be that psychology there. There's still got to be that for a reason. Be it that the storyline that you really fucking hate each other. That's why you come in all guns blazing. There's no point running around like a headless chicken in a ring, because you're just going to get blown up and hurt yourself.
So, I mean, Mr. Morocco, it's fan time now. So, where you've been brought up in wrestling, were you ever a fan of WWE, WCW back in the day, or have you always kind of seen the British style of wrestling?
To be honest, mate, when I was younger, I didn't really like watching it.
Really?
I weren't a fan too much. I mean, in my later years, I've become more of a fan, and that's not for the actual storylines, it's for the way that people are working. I mean, you look at the WWE now with all Tyler Bate and Trent Seven.
Yeah.
You've got a completely different era coming in. I mean, they always try and bring it back, and this is what Marty Jones said on the training seminar. They always bring it back. If you remember the 2000s and 2010, so 2010 sort of era, they're bringing back everything from the Attitude Era. So they're bringing back DX and stuff like that. Yeah. Now they're bringing back all the old world sport workers. And the British people are shining. This is what I'm saying. British wrestling is just about to take off in a big way. Mark my words.
No, you can tell, and it's annoying how they don't use them enough either.
The thing is, they've got to cater for everyone. They've got to cater for their American market as much as anything. But nowadays, it's become more of a show for children.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, one of the matches that does actually stick in my head, and I remember watching this with my dad on a Saturday morning, I believe, on Sky One, on Raw. And it was, it was Shane McMahon versus Kurt Angle. And it was the match with the glass where they're throwing each other through fucking glass. And I mean, that's something that stuck in my head as a kid. I mean, claret everywhere, and the match it didn't really have much of a structure to it.
No, all I remember is he keeps landing on his neck when he was trying to break the glass. It was like 3 or 4 times he landed his screw on his neck.
Yeah, and that's it. And do you know what? You can see them. They completely break kayfabe. If anyone knows what fucking kayfabe is nowadays, I don't think they do, because everyone fucking breaks it. Technically, I am now.
Yeah.
But, he completely breaks it. I mean, like, he goes through the first one in the end, maybe after the third throw, and then Kurt goes to him, do you want to go through? And he's like, yeah, do it again. Throws him, misses. He's like, are you sure? It's like, this is genuine real glass. It's not like fucking sugar glass or whatever they call it. Yeah. This is proper glass. You can tell it is, because as soon as he hit it, they were both cut. Yeah. I think even the ref got some fucking cuts in there as well.
So, I mean, you see that was the kind of first real one that stood out to you. Do you watch the current product now, or?
Nah, not really. I mean, a bit of a straw really myself. I've got a WWE Network on bloody subscription, and that was only to watch the NXT matches.
Yeah.
I mean, watching all that, they're very good workers, and they're very violent and very physical. And the biggest thing for me is they're coming out of their matches and they've actually got marks on their body from where they've hit each other, from where they've kicked each other, from where they've actually made contact. I understand that in a big way. And if you notice, none of them are throwing no closed fists. I mean, like, yeah, Jack Gallagher, whatever his name is, does a headbutt as a finish, which is a bit, like, shady when it comes to rules of wrestling. But none of them have got closed fists. They've all got open fists. They're all using forearms. And they're all using stuff that would genuinely hurt. I mean, they're tying each other up in knots on a daily basis. And that pops me more than watching John Cena fucking throw Undertaker through the stage or something like that. It's okay, this is so set up. This is so bad that it's cringeworthy. No, yes. I mean, the style of wrestling nowadays, like I said, the American shit, it's just catered. It's so catered for children. And you get the kids. The kids will watch it and they'll go, Mum, Dad, I want to be a wrestler. And the mum and dad don't see any problem in that nowadays because it just looks like playtime.
Yeah.
Whereas if you would have said it to your mum and dad 30 years ago, they would turn around and go, no, you can't do that. You're nowhere near what they do. You know what I mean? It's completely different. It's completely different. I mean, when my dad was brought into wrestling, I think he's done one training session or something like that. They taught him how to bump, and they didn't even teach him to bump properly. And then next thing you know, he's got a pair of boots and he's in the ring getting beaten up day by day by Mal Sanders and people like that. I mean, getting his ass handed to him properly. Not like a little bit here, a little bit there. And my dad was, 10 stone soaking wet at this point?
Wow.
I mean, he was getting his ass kicked on a regular basis, and that's what gives you respect for the job. I mean, I agree with the old school ways to a certain extent, and then to another extent I don't. I agree for the respect for the job, but at the same time, if you're scaring people off the job, you're losing your market. You're losing the people that want to watch you. You know? You kind of got to hit it in the middle when it comes to it. Get them the respect for the job, but don't hurt them in the process.
No, solid advice. So, I mean, is there any wrestler out there that, in terms of ring style and moveset, whether they're currently out there now, who would you kind of recommend to keep your eye on for their type of ring style?
Oh, bloody hell. I reckon Zack Sabre Jr.
Yeah?
Zack Sabre. I mean, there's one thing that does make me cringe with a lot of the kind of new era of wrestlers that are coming out, and that's the no knee pad gimmick.
Yeah.
I mean, for shock value, don't wear knee pads. It does look like pretty vicious. I mean, there's one thing that I'm going to be doing nowadays, and that's dropping my knee pads to do knee drops onto people, because it looks a bit more vicious, understandably. But to wrestle with no knee pads on, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, a lot of the old school lot, they got big swollen up knees and knackered knees and barely walking because of wrestling with no knee pads. But yeah, Zack Sabre Jr., I mean, his style, he's just got a finesse that I haven't seen since the old school. And he's actually a nice bloke, actually. I've met him a few times. He used to do a few shows for my dad when my dad used to run Best of British Wrestling. And he's actually a nice lad, a really nice lad. I think the last time I see Zach, I was doing an IPW show in 2014. I think I was wrestling Andy Simmons at the time, actually, as well. And he came up to me afterwards and he goes, you'd be good for Japan. And it's like, fucking hell. And that's someone who was touring in Japan at the time.
Yeah.
To come up to me and say that. And yeah, I was lazy in the sense that I never really seeked my full potential as such. And I didn't really chase after things. I weren't bothered too much. And that's because my dad was running shows all around the country, and I didn't want to leave my comfort zone. I mean, like, I think the most daunting time I ever had was I went to a All-Star show. I got booked to do just a Royal Rumble at the end. And I'm stood backstage, I've got all my ring gear on, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, so I'm waiting for Brian to come out. That's Brian Dixon, who owns the company. Yeah. And I think it was his daughter in the end, Letitia, who came up to me, and she said to me, "Oh, Danny, you're just doing a Rumble at the end, okay?" So I stood there in wrestling gear for the eternity of the show, so about an hour and a half, 2 hours, waiting to go in just for a Rumble. And I'd been in training. I knew what I was doing. I was, in my eyes, I was a professional wrestler. And I got in the ring and froze. Completely froze, and my arsehole dropped out, and I forgot every single thing that I learned. I forgot how to lock up. I forgot how to do anything, and it was horrible. And I said at that point, after I'd done that, I would never, ever, ever be the one in the Rumble that was scared again. I would make sure that if I ever went into a Rumble again, I was the one who was running in, and hitting anyone that I could. I mean, I'm not saying I wanted to be a fucking bully, because that's nothing I wanted to be, but at the same time, I didn't want to be bullied. Yeah. I went in there with the likes of James Mason, Zach and Roy Knight, Dean Allmark, Robbie Dynamite, and everyone like that. And these are lads that are wrestling every single day. And they tore me apart. Completely tore me apart. But that is part of wrestling. No one, I expect no one who listen to this podcast, if you're a trainee or a wrestler now, expect it that either this is going to happen to you or it's already happened to you. It's part of wrestling. That's almost like you're breaking in. If you go into the army, you're guaranteed that you're going to be broken in. Initiation shit, that's just what that is. But it sorts you out. It sorts out if you've got an ego. It knocks your ego off before you have one, sort of thing. And if you never come back to wrestling, that's what it's designed for. It's designed to sort out who's going to be a wrestler and who isn't.
Yeah,
I mean, it's all well good. That's it. I'm not being a prick. I'm not trying to sound like a prick.
It's a part of being an apprentice, really, isn't it? You think of any job at all. You can be an electrician, you can be a mechanic, and work in an office and shit like that. Same thing happens. And
electricians and mechanics, they send you to the shop and ask you for a long wait and stuff like that, and tell you to go get this, a left-handed screwdriver, and it's all that rib, and it's all that thing. If you can deal with it, you're okay. And you just got to brush it off, because there's loads of things. I mean, in wrestling, I'm pretty sure not a lot of people have probably had this done to them, but, I mean, to go backstage, sort out a match with someone, and then go out so that you know who you're wrestling, you know what match you're doing, but you go out, get in that ring, and you're ready and willing, and then someone else's entrance music comes on, and someone else comes out. No one you know, haven't been through a match with them, and you've got to work them, and you've got to make that look good. I mean, that's a rib. That's one of the ribs. Or you've got one where they'll cut the laces out your boots. And I mean, if you've got a pair of professional wrestling boots, proper wrestling boots, you can't find another set of laces for them. You know, I mean, you can't go round to the shop quickly and get a pair of laces. I mean, 9 times out of 10, they'll do it just before you go on. And this is little things, and you probably think, it's not too bad. Little things like deep heat in the inside of your tights before you go. I mean, like, you don't feel that straight away, but as soon as you start working in that ring, you'll feel it. And you think, these ain't too bad, and they're not compared to what they used to do.
Yeah.
But this is little things that they do during a whole week of you being away on the camps, and it's all to sort out. If you can take a joke and you can laugh, then you're all right. But if you take it personal, you might as well not be in wrestling.
No, fair enough.
That's the thing. I mean, you've got the biggest ribbers in the country. I mean, just off the palm of my hand, Johnny Storm is a massive ribber. Massive. He's got me a few times with little things, like even getting pantsed. You'll be carrying a ring board, and if your fucking string to your trousers, if you're in jogging bottoms, ain't done up, they're coming down with your trousers. He'll pull everything down. He done it to Lewis Howley a couple of weeks ago on the tours with my dad. I mean, little thing like that, and Lewis Howley turns around and laughs, finds it funny. That's exactly what you've got to do. If you get a strop and sulk, then you're not cut out for it. I'm not being out of order, but you're not. I think another one is Craig Burridge. He's a massive ribber. I think there's a story of him pantsing Colt Cabana in the middle of a KFC or a Burger King or something, and Colt Cabana stood there with his tackle out, just stood there, normal, carried on order his food. So you've either got to no-sell it or laugh. And if you no-sell it, it gets on their nerves and they go, shit, okay, we can't really get this bloke.
Yeah. On to the next one.
That's it. But seriously, once you're into wrestling, and once you're in it, and you're properly in it, you can't let it go. You'll find yourself walking around fucking Tesco's with your missus, and you'll be looking at different things, and you'll be going, that would be good for a gimmick. Oh, that would be good for a bit of ring gear. That would be good for this. And it's like, fucking hell, I can't go a minute without thinking about this.
Yeah.
And it can drive you insane. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Something I've been brought up in, and something I will never, ever drop again. I dropped it for the right reasons, but I always wanted to come back to it, and it was the missus that finally kicked me up the arse and told me, go on, do it.
Yeah, good. And you can tell, just like you said, 23, the amount of experience and the advice you're able to talk about now, you can tell that you're a wrestler through and through. So, I mean, also you mentioned Zack Sabre Jr. Is he, if there was any wrestler in the world right now who you could work a match with right now, anywhere in the world, who would it be?
Ooh. Do you know what? I wouldn't say it was Zack. No? It would probably be my dad again. It would probably be my dad. I mean, he's built like the Bionic Man at the moment. He's got titanium neck, titanium fucking ankles. He's got a snapped bicep where he had to have it drilled back in. And I always thought to myself, I've got to work him before he ends up either croaking it or retiring. And I ended up working him when we'd done a World of Sport match. And this was in Southport. We'd done a World of Sport match, and we told everyone that was on the team, everyone that was anything to do with it, that this was a professional sanctioned match for the light British heavyweight champion. And we had everyone believing it was real. And this was rounds. We'd done rounds, and it was nice and slow. We'd done 5-minute rounds, nice and slow, easy. And we didn't rehearse anything. We'd done a few little, we knew what we were doing as such. We just called it in the match. But it was lovely, and it was nice and easy. And you didn't ache. You weren't blown out to a certain extent. I mean, he's stiffed me a few times, and I've stiffed him a few times. And I mean, he's given me a set of black testicles before. He's lifted my legs up for an Indian deathlock and stood on my mouth and twisted. I mean, that was... Yeah, I mean, there was a picture actually floating around of that, me with me cacks out, because I had black testicles, and you take it on the chin. I mean, that hurt. That really hurt. But I landed on the top of his head. And I mean, this is after he's had bloody neck surgery, and I've landed on the top of his head and sent shock through his body. But that's just part of being green as well. I mean, I've done silly things like I went to duck a clothesline, and instead of just running and ducking down forwards, I've decided to do the Matrix and run backwards, like with my head backwards. I don't know why the fuck I decided to do it, but I tell you what, I hit my arse on the floor and I was up so bloody quick after that. But I got ribbed for that for weeks. Got called the Matrix. For ages, and little things like that. I mean, you can get an ego through wrestling, and you can go really fucking far. You can be in a WWE, but you'll always have that one person who remembers you from when you first started, and it can be someone. For me, would be either my dad or Johnny. So if I'm in a WWE or something, then I've come back to England and I've started working on shows. I'm like got an ego for myself and a chip on my shoulder. I know Johnny or my dad would come up to me and turn around and go, "Do you remember when you fell on your ass? Do you remember the Matrix spot? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Do you remember when you slipped over in the middle of the ring and made yourself look like a twat?"
Bring you down to earth.
That's why I'm saying, with the right
you need
people,
that though as well.
I mean, with the right people having it go, yeah. But you've got to have, like I said, it's going back to that thing of being able to have the piss taken out of you. And I'm not good in like my normal life. I hate people taking the mick out of me. You can ask me, missus, I sit there and sulk. But in wrestling, it's
fair
part
game,
of it.
yeah.
You can't not. I mean, my old man did used to try and batter it out of me, like the whole sulkiness. I used to get stroppy. I used to get sulky. It's all part of it. I mean, when it comes to someone's been taking the piss out of you 5 fucking days straight, and you're angry because you ain't eating, and you're fucking putting a ring up every day, and you're working twice a day, I mean, you end up getting a bit of a chip on your shoulder. But the old man used to straighten it out of me. The amount of times I've had a slap around the back of the head off him. But it's all part of wrestling.
It's all part of being in a wrestling family as well, I suppose. So, I mean, what would you say are the 3 top things that make a successful match? And I know one of them psychology, and I completely agree with you with that one. But what would you say some other things are for a perfect match, wrestling match 101?
Perfect match, a beginning, a middle, and the end.
So simple.
That's what you need. No, in all seriousness, when it comes to it, like you say, psychology, definitely. 2 people that actually know what they're doing in the ring. My old man always used to tell me that it always works better if you work someone that you genuinely don't like, because you'll always be a bit harder with them, rather than someone that you like and you think, oh, I don't want to hurt them. You know what I mean? And another thing, this probably ties in with psychology again, just finishing on something that makes sense. I mean, if you look at Dynamite Kid, right, he used to do a pile driver and then finish with a diving headbutt to the head. That made sense. That did make sense. Whereas you get people that finish now, and like I said, they'll be working the arm for the match, and then they'll finish with a 450 off the top rope, and it just don't make sense. And you think, okay, yeah, wow value of someone doing that, I understand. But in my eyes, that's hurting more the person who's doing it than the recipient of the move, you know what I mean? I mean, it's uncomfortable as shit as well. I mean, I've had people flip onto me and not felt a thing, and I know that after the match they're aching like a bitch and I'm all right. That's where the thing of knowing when to do it. You look at Johnny Storm. He's been wrestling 20 years or something like that. When he first started wrestling, you look at his old stuff when he had long hair, and he's neck bumping everywhere. Landed on his head, neck bumping, lands on his head. And it's like, oh. You find him now, he's however old he is, and he's been doing it for however long. Maybe he's a little bit of niggling injuries, but nothing too much. And he is the only wrestler I know nowadays, personally, who is a full-time wrestler, who makes a living, who manages to have a mortgage just through wrestling. Yeah, people will listen to this and turn around and say, yeah, but he sells loads of merchandise. Yeah. That's part of being a full-time worker in the wrestling business. But he's however old he is, and if you get him on a little show, he won't do much. But if you get him on a big show, like in Spain on the fucking ball ring, that's one of the places he's wrestled, and he'll be flipping around like a monkey. And you'll think, Jesus Christ. And he always used to say to me, know when to do it and know not when to do it. When I first started wrestling, I was happy to fly. I was happy to jump off that top rope every day, twice a day. And I thought, right, okay, yeah. My dad said to me, you're going to calm it down, you're going to hurt yourself. It took me a year of doing that to realise that I was hurting myself. It was hurting. My neck was sore as fuck. And that's when you stop thinking about getting all your shit in and getting all your moves in and you start thinking about what would make sense for a finish and what would make sense for a match. I mean, I started finishing on a roll-up, and that used to get more of a pop than jumping off that top rope, because 90% of people I used to jump off the top rope to used to move out the fucking way anyway. They never liked it. But that's one of the biggest things for me, is knowing. That's, again, it's just psychology. It's all psychology with me, mate.
No, that's fine. It's good. It's a different aspect. It's good. So you're getting back into the wrestling business now. You're back wrestling and performing again. What are you looking to achieve in the near future?
I don't know, really. I can't really say that I want to get signed to WWE and anything like that. I've never been much of a mark for anything like that. It would be nice to make it to Japan.
Yeah.
That would be something I'd look for. But I don't know, maybe just work a few independent shows around the area. I mean, maybe just get known again, get known for my working again, and then get back on the indie circuits. I mean, the biggest thing in this country, I think, is Progress Wrestling.
Yeah.
And I know one of the wrestlers that works for them quite a lot, James Davis. I've wrestled him quite a few times, actually. He was on the camps with me for quite a while, a whole summer tour. I wrestled him like every day. And we had some brilliant matches. And I kind of catered my wrestling to what he likes, and he likes people being a bit more leady with him, hurting him a bit. I understand that. I do get that type of wrestling, but at the end of the day, like Johnny used to say, if you're working every single day, know when to do it and know when not to do it. You don't want to break your fucking back.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But yeah, as far as that goes, I'd just like to make my way up in the independent circuits.
Yeah.
That would be good for me. I mean, if one day, I mean, I'm not going to sound like I mark too much here, but if one day WWE knock on my door, I mean, if they turned around and said to me they want to offer me a contract, they'd have a lot of stipulations in them contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't be going over there without my daughter or without my missus. I can tell you that.
Yeah,
for sure.
no, of course, yeah. So, how can listeners keep up with you then, Danny? You've got your Facebook page, which I'll share with people.
Page. Yeah, it's more of the like page now. I'm kind of phasing out from just having a Facebook page. The like page, because promoters out there can obviously book me through that. I mean, if anyone does want to book me through it, my phone number's on there. If you can't get hold of that, then just message on there. Yeah, that's literally it. I mean, I know I've got a show for Jimmy Starr. That's Falling Star in October.
Okay, good.
And that's like my kind of first show back properly.
Yeah, and
I believe that I'm in a tag match with the old man, so that should be quite funny. He's got a better fucking body than me nowadays, though. That's the only problem.
Nice. Well, that's it now. That's you for the next month and a bit.
Well.
Rocky training.
That's it, yeah. That's it, yeah. But that's another thing. I urge everyone who wants to get into wrestling, or wants to be a wrestler, or wants to even be a referee, a manager, or anything like that, get yourself down to any fucking local shows near you and offer to put the bloody ring up. Because no one gets in for free. Get yourself down there, put a ring up, and just to offer yourself. Give your number to the promoter, and just do it that way. It's the best way to do it. You'll end up getting training. You might end up going far with that promotion. This is what I've told all my trainees as well. I've got a show in October. I expect them all to go down here and put the ring up.
Yeah, no, it's simple advice, but it seems like a lot of these kids nowadays don't see how simple it can be just to kind of help. It's so easy just to kind of help and actually put a shift in, rather than just kind of standing around and talking or anything like that. Just help put the ring up. That's one thing I'd definitely recommend as well. Any parting words for people? Any shout outs?
I don't know, really. Shout outs. I've never really done a shout out in my life.
Imagine you're on a radio show and this is your moment.
This is my moment. Well, shout out to all the promoters who actually want to book me. Shout out to the old man, and shout out to you with your podcast, and hopefully they go well.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully you end up actually becoming a fully fledged professional wrestler.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it'll be a pleasure to work a match, and no doubt there'll be some stiff shots thrown by you, and I'll have to kind of cover my own as well. But no, I look forward to it. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, Danny, and honestly, I could sit and listen to your stories and your knowledge all day. So it's been a pleasure sitting here and having this interview with you.
Yeah, this is my first podcast in a while, so...
No, good. Well, I'll ensure that I'll keep up with you. And listeners, I urge you to go and check out the Essex School of Wrestling. And where's that base? It's in Great Tipton in Essex, isn't it?
Great Tottenham, yeah.
Great Tottenham. So what am I thinking, Tipton? Yeah. But, okay, no, fair enough. Well, thank you for being on the show, Danny. And guys and girls, that's it from this week from me. Thank you for following my journey, listening to this show, this podcast, and guys and girls, I look forward to wrestling a match with you all very soon. And I'll speak to you all next week.
Yeah.
Thank you again for listening, and people, I need your help. I would love it if you could pop over to iTunes to leave this podcast a review. Your reviews are so important to me. I need to understand what you think of the show, and it helps just raise awareness for everyone else on this show. And not only that, guys, if you have a friend or a relative who you know is an avid wrestling fan, please point them in this podcast's direction.